Good morning folks, and welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing well today. It is currently 31 degrees here in Saigon and we are on our way to District 3 to visit the War Remnants Museum. Been looking forward to visiting this for a long time. Yesterday we were in the Ho Chi tunnels where we learned so much about the American war here in Vietnam, and we expect to do more of that today. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, do hit the subscribe button, give us a like and let us know what you think in the comments below. An earlier version of this museum was actually set up in 1975 by Ho Chi Minh and his government, and it was located in the United States Information Agency building here in Saigon. To me, that's very, very cool, and the fact that we're going to visit that today is just unbelievable. And this museum wasn't, it certainly wasn't the first of its kind here in Vietnam. There were several other museums exposing kind of the crimes of the Americans and the French here as well. Back in 1990, this museum was known as the Exhibition House for War and Aggression, and in 1995 basically Vietnam normalised its relations with the USA, and it had war crimes and aggression, interestingly enough, removed from the title and dropped inside the museum as well, which is particularly interesting, I think. Just saw an army helmet kind of sitting on a bike there randomly, so I assume it's from a current serving officer at the moment. And while you're here, I just wanted to give my own blog a kind of an advertisement. FahijamesTravel.com. I'm trying to put together blog itineraries, blog posts about our travels here in Southeast Asia and beyond, so head on over to there and have a look. Maybe subscribe to the newsletter as well, you'll keep up to date. So we're just after arriving outside of here now, and we're greeted by some huge helicopters. It looks like a US airplane, tanks, they've pretty much everything out here, so yeah, I'm looking forward to going inside. Yeah, not bad at all. 40,000 Vietnamese dong to get in here, which is very reasonable. So just something to keep in mind as well, it's only cash only to get in here. They wouldn't take our cards, so if you are coming, just something to note. We're in here probably only a few minutes already, and it's so powerful, like just the artillery strength that is on show only here. And when you think about how much of a bigger scale the actual war was, like, this is absolutely nothing compared to that, but it's quite scary. It's quite scary to see it here in person. So if you look at this piece of equipment here, this is the 155mm howitzer. Its max range is 14,600 meters. This can shoot nearly 15 kilometers away. That is mind-blowing. If you look at the scale, comparing me to the gun itself is something else. They are absolutely huge, and some of these have like 30,000 meter ranges. So they had 152 of these machines in 1969 here in Vietnam. So now it looks like it's time to explore the US Air Force exhibition that's on here. The first thought is, for like, these aren't the most modern planes, and again, I would be no expert, but they look like they're absolutely lethal. The sides of them, obviously, they have their space for their missiles and their weapons, and I imagine just seeing this in action would be something surreal. So now I'm just standing beside the A1 Skyraider, and this plane kind of, when I think about the Vietnamese War, definitely is the first one that comes to mind. the elevated seat up into the top. It's a very kind of, how would you say, almost elegant looking aircraft. I don't know if that's the right word, to be honest, because of what it is made for. So next up are the tiger cages where the Vietnamese would have kept their political prisoners. So this should be something. So I don't know if you can see them, but there's about 7 or 8 little bats sleeping there quietly. And in fact,
I'm sorry to leave this place.
they're all around us.
There's too many bats.
Too many bats for Lupe, and to be honest, too many bats for me, so I'm out. So there was some bat pee actually dripping down on us there, which wasn't a nice experience, but we shouldn't really be disturbing them in their home. What a place to have their home, in the tiger cage. Every time when you're kind of walking up to these places, for a split second you think it's actually a real person still in there, but thankfully it's not that way. And if you want another example of real cruelty, have a look at this. So the guards would force the prisoners to roll along this, which would obviously catch their hair in their skin and peel it off until they would be bleeding on the head and on the body. So during the war here, the Americans and the southern Vietnamese government really focused on the prison system. Basically there were several prisons around the south of Vietnam where it would be under supervision of 5 US advisors, and basically they were full with equipment to torture and basically carry out horrific acts on the prisoners there. So you can see here the many different prisons that they had up in operation at the time. Well, I'm just reading here that in 1971 the government here established education centres for juveniles. They tried to kind of distract the public, make them think it was like a good thing, but really it followed the very strict prison system that they had established throughout much of southern Vietnam here. So to think that they were doing this to young juveniles at the time, it says a lot about the mentality and what they were trying to achieve. It's really horrifying. You can see some of the torture methods used by the guards here: removing of the finger and toenails, blinding them with light, locking them in the tiger cages, burning them out so they couldn't eat. So now it's time to enter into the museum as well. To be honest, I don't even know if I can handle it at this stage. What we've seen so far has been absolutely stomach turning. This is what happened here, this is real life. So it's always good to learn about the past and history, I believe anyway, so we'll give it a go. So in 1972, Ho Chi Minh and his government completed a policy document which 10 years previously Ho Chi Minh estimated that the Americans would bring their B-52 bombers to rain terror over Vietnam, which they did. But because they developed this policy and document, they were able to fight off these B-52 bombers so well that they destroyed half of the fleet which came to Vietnam, and ultimately it led to Nixon signing the peace accords in 1975. So I've just been reading Ho Chi Minh's telegram to the American people on New Year's Eve 1968. He talks about how he's grateful for the American people who are against the war to stand with him, how the American government have squandered all the money, all the debts that they've had as well, and ultimately the Vietnamese will win. He's glad for their support as well. It was extremely powerful to read. It's just unbelievable to read it here. It kind of almost transports you back to the time when it's happening. Unbelievable. So we are down on the base level there of the museum itself, on the indoor part, and there's another 2 stories. So we're going to go up now, I believe, to the war crimes section. The first floor, or the ground floor I should say, was more to do about the world's, the different countries' support for Vietnam, which was interesting to see. So this part of the museum is extremely dark, very hard to read, very hard to look at the imagery up here. To be honest, some of it I'm not even going to show you because it's too vile, to be honest, is the only word I can think of it to describe it. There's a display on the My Lai massacre as well. I'm sure you may or may not be familiar with that. But basically, one of the battalions killed over 500 Vietnamese, mostly elderly women, children. Very, very sad. But this is what really happened here. On the other hand, you do have some kind of nicer parts to such a tragic story where some of the American soldiers would have stopped these crimes from happening. A couple of guys were mentioned there who they were flying a helicopter overhead and they sat it down and then they started to protect some elderly Vietnamese and a couple of children. So you do have some good stories in what is overall a tough experience. So they also have images up of victims of the napalm and phosphorus bombs, and to be honest, I'm just not going to put them on here because they are absolutely unbelievable to see. And to be honest, I don't even know if YouTube will let me put them up, but I don't even want to anyway. So now that the war crimes section is over, Agent Orange Effects is up next, so this should be also pretty hard to look at, but nonetheless it will be a good learning experience. So just out of the Agent Orange Effects section of this museum, and again I just wouldn't feel like putting up pictures of the victims in there. I know it is obviously a museum and people can come in to view them anyway, but seriously intense to see. Kind of makes you think how lucky we are because we've never lived through a time like that, at least I haven't anyway. But how people can use this sort of destructive toxins and chemicals is unbelievable. I'm just hoping that people will learn from this, and obviously it's such a monumental war that did take place, but it's tough to watch. But I think more people should see it, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a long shot, but maybe in the future it will make people think twice when it comes to using such warfare. Yeah, unbelievable. We're just taking a little break here now. We're on the second floor and we're about to head up to the final stop, the final level, which is the historical truth section. Absolutely exhausted now. I don't know whether it's the subject matter that we're covering or if it's just another reason, but it is tough if you are coming here, so be prepared. You will learn a lot, but it is a tough subject matter. So the next section we're going into is looking at the war correspondents who died in Indochina throughout the wars. I suppose as someone who really is into photography, obviously not war photography, it kind of shows you the advantage of actually having these images now so long after, because it can really give context to what happened there and it can let people learn much more about the war itself. Yeah, this section is really interesting. These are the people who go in and shine a light on these issues when they're happening, and not many people can do that or would have the courage to go in without weapons or protection, that sort of way. So yeah, they're amazing people, I think. So it was really interesting there on the top level. It kind of gave a comparison of the Americans in Vietnam, the Americans in World War II, and the Americans in the Korean War. The amount of time that the wars lasted, the amount of personnel that they used, the money that was spent. It really kind of gives a good idea of the resources that were allocated to the war here. So that's the video on the War Remnants Museum here in Saigon. We spent a little over 3 hours there, which I think you could probably spend another half an hour if you wanted, but that's probably enough. What an eye-opening experience it was, is all I have to say. It really brought to life the damage that the American war brought to Vietnam, especially in the south. The pictures of the victims of Agent Orange, just the damage that the war caused itself, the bombs that were dropped. interesting to learn about the reporters who were remembered as well. While it's quite a sad experience, it is very good to learn about these things. I think when it comes to Vietnam, definitely I wanted to learn more about the American war here, so I'm happy I got to do that. And I would definitely recommend it if you are coming to Vietnam to visit the War Remnants Museum. So if you did like the video, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, give it a like and let us know what you think. We'll be sharing many more videos coming in the next while, so looking forward to doing that. And yeah, cheers for now. Bye.